My world is about finding the flaw. I am, for my sins, a restaurant critic. Not one of the new, everything is awesome Instagram influencers, but a real old school, anonymous critic for the city's biggest paper. My name, Providor, is whispered in kitchens like a curse. I don't just review food, I review the ambition. And 9 times out of 10, the ambition is a lie. My life is clean, my palate is a weapon, and I am, by all accounts, a very lonely bastard. My editor, in a fit of "we need to diversify our content," sent me on a ridiculous assignment. Not to a hot, new Michelin-chasing spot in the city, but to a 10-table shack on the coast, 3 hours from anything. The place was called The Current. It had a 6-month wait list. The chef, a guy named Ben, was a one-man show. He was the host, the waiter, the cook, and from what I'd heard, the guy who'd probably built the tables. I hated it already. It was a gimmick, a heartwarming narrative to mask what was inevitably going to be sloppy, inconsistent food. I arrived on a Tuesday night, my reservation for 1, just as the sun was setting. The place was beautiful, I'd give it that. It was perched on a cliff, all reclaimed wood and big, glass windows overlooking the ocean. The kitchen was just a 6-burner stove and a small prep counter, right out in the open part of the dining room. And there he was, Ben. He was exactly what I'd expected, mid-30s, scruffy, handsome in that "I'm too passionate for a haircut" kind of way, and radiating a chaotic, stressed-out energy. He was seating at a table, taking a wine order, and yelling "just a sec" to a pan that was starting to smoke on the stove, all at the same time. I sat at my small table in the corner. I was anonymous. I was Providor. I opened my notebook. My internal review had already started. The charm of a one-man show wears thin when the man is visibly drowning. The first hour was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. He was a dervish. He'd run from the stove, to the prep counter, to the tables, dropping off plates of food that were, I had to admit, stunning. The menu was just what I have, and what he had was a scallop and fennel crudo that was so bright and clean it tasted like the ocean wind. He was good. I hated that he was good. But you can't sustain that kind of energy. And as the restaurant filled up, the vibe started to shift. The charming, frantic ballet became a simple, high-speed train wreck. I saw the moment it happened. He had 2 large tables, a 6-top of loud, wine-drunk tourists, and a 4-top of quiet, older locals. The 6-top was demanding. They were sending things back, the scallops were too cold. They were crudo, you idiots. They were asking for substitutions, they were changing their wine order. Ben was stretched thin. He was trying to sear 8 pieces of halibut at once, take a dessert order, and uncork a bottle of wine. His hands, I noticed, were shaking. His face was pale, and he had a sheen of sweat on his forehead that wasn't just from the stove. He was drowning. And I just sat there watching, taking notes. The fatal flaw of the artisan, a lack of structure. The chef, for all his talent, is his own worst enemy. The halibut, when it finally arrived, was a minute over. A tragedy. The crash came, as it always does. The 6-top complained loudly that their halibut was dry. Ben, his back to the room, just stood at the stove for a full 10 seconds. He didn't move. Then, as he turned to grab a new pan, his elbow knocked a stack of clean, heavy ceramic plates from the pass. They didn't shatter. They just hit the floor with a series of dull, defeated, expensive thuds. The entire restaurant went silent. The only sound was the hiss of the pan he'd left on the stove, which was now starting to smoke. Ben just stopped. He looked at the plates on the floor. He looked at the smoking pan. He looked at the 6-top, who were now staring at him with undisguised annoyance. He put his hands on his prep counter, leaned his full weight on them, and dropped his head, his shoulders shaking. He wasn't sobbing, not yet. But he was broken. He was completely, totally, publicly defeated. And I felt nothing. Or, I told myself I felt nothing. This was the story. This was the review. The moment the dream died. But I was wrong. I didn't feel nothing. I felt angry. Not at him. I was angry at the people at the 6-top. I was angry at the impossible, stupid, romantic ambition of the whole goddamn enterprise. And I was angry at myself for being the guy who just sat in the corner and watched it burn. I did something I have never, ever done. I put my pen down. I stood up. The whole room was watching me, this quiet, well-dressed man at the corner table. I walked past the 6-top. I walked right into the open kitchen space. Ben was still leaning on the counter, his back to me. He must have heard me, because he flinched, probably expecting me to be one more customer demanding to know where his food was. He started, his voice thick. I just need a minute. I didn't say a word. I took off my $1,000 custom-made wool blazer, the one I wore to all my reviews. I folded it neatly, and I placed it on a clean stool in the corner. Then I walked over to the sink. It was a big, industrial, 3-bay steel sink, and it was overflowing with dirty, high-end pans and dishes. I turned on the hot water, found the soap, and I just started washing the dishes. I heard him finally turn around. I didn't look at him. I just kept scrubbing a sauté pan. What are you doing?" he whispered, his voice a mix of utter confusion and disbelief. "You're out of clean pans," I said, my voice flat. I rinsed the pan and put it on the drying rack. "You need this one for the halibut. You've got 2 more orders on the rail." I heard him take a shaky, wet, laughing kind of breath. Are you the health inspector?" "No," I said, grabbing a new stack of plates from a lower shelf and sliding them onto the pass to replace the ones he'd dropped. "I'm the guy who's ruining your dish pit. Now, you have 6 minutes to get that halibut on the plate before it's inedible. Go. Cook." I don't know what he saw in my face, but he nodded. He wiped his face on a towel, turned back to the stove, took a deep breath, and he started to cook. And I started to wash. For the next hour, we were a team. I was the silent, efficient engine he didn't know he needed. I cleared plates from his counter. I washed every pot, pan, and dish. I refilled his water bottle. I kept his station clean. I didn't say a word. I just created a clean, logical, ordered space for his chaos to thrive in. I found a rhythm. Scrub, rinse, stack. Scrub, rinse, stack. We saved the service. The 6 top got their new halibut, and it was perfect. The 4 top got their dessert. The last tables left, fat and happy, with no idea of the war that had just been fought. Finally, at almost 1 a.m., the last table was gone. The kitchen was clean. Cleaner than it had been when I'd arrived. I had scrubbed the stove. I had wiped down all the counters. Ben was sitting on the stool where I had put my jacket. He was drinking a beer from a bottle and just watching me. He looked wrecked, and he looked relieved. I finished wiping down the sink. I took off the apron I'd found, which was now covered in everything. "So," he said, his voice quiet in the empty restaurant. "Who are you?" I turned around, leaning against the clean sink. "My name is Julian." He nodded. "Well, Julian, you're a hell of a dishwasher. You want a beer? Or are you going to, go write the story of how you saw a grown man cry in his own kitchen?" I walked over, took the beer he was offering me. "I don't know what I'm going to do," I said. And it was the first time in my professional life that it was the God's honest truth. We sat there in the quiet for a long time, just drinking. "I'm Providor," I said finally. He choked on his beer. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a new kind of horror. "You're Providor? The guy who wrote that review of the Crimson? The one about the tyranny of the tasting menu?" "That was me," I admitted. "Oh my God," he said. He put his head in his hands. "And you washed my dishes." He looked up, and he wasn't horrified. He was laughing. A real, deep, exhausted laugh. "I'm so screwed." "You're not screwed," I said, surprising myself. "Your crudo was a revelation. Your halibut was, the second time, perfectly cooked. And your ambition, it's insane. And it's real. And I'm a terrible businessman who can't handle a 6 top, he said, his smile fading. "Yeah," I said, taking a sip of the beer. "You are. You need a dishwasher. And a new reservation system. And probably a host." He just nodded, looking at the floor. "I know. I can't afford it. I can't afford any of it." "I know," I said. We were quiet again. I looked around the small, perfect, impossible restaurant. "So," I said, standing up, "my review. It's going to be brutal." He flinched, just slightly. "Yeah, I figured. It's going to say that your restaurant is a chaotic, unsustainable, deeply flawed, and borderline suicidal enterprise." "Thanks, man. But," I said, walking over to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. He looked up. "It's also going to say that the food is a work of genius. And that people should go. Immediately. And that they should be patient. And that it is, without question, the best, most honest meal in the state. And that the chef has more heart than any 10 restaurants in the city." He just stared at me, his eyes shining. "And," I said, my voice dropping, "it's going to be my last review." "What?" he whispered. "I'm quitting," I said. The words came out, and I realized they were true. "I'm tired of just watching. I want to build something." "What are you going to do?" I looked at his dish pit. I looked at his messy, brilliant six-burner stove. Well, I said, a slow, unfamiliar, and totally illogical smile spreading across my face. I hear you're hiring.